Hey, what is up? It is your boy, Mr. Gaming here. We are here today, and we are doing a live stream. And I hope my little mistake of what I just did doesn't affect anything at all. And anyway, let's get right on with the stream. And wait, let me just move the cursor thing lower because if it's hot, way too high, I can't click it. Alright, so first story of the day. Object permeance. Hey, welcome to the stream, Madison Schufelt. Alright, so lately, I have been questioning the reality of things around me. I can sure identify where it started and where it came from, but I just can't get it out. Oof. An idea cannot be killed. You may try to think about it or distract yourself, but it is there, and it will always be there. Now, if you would like to hear a bit about me, just sit tight for a brief preload. At a young age, I was like any other normal boy, except for one little hindrance. I grew up, attended school, went to college, and graduated, all with good, if not exceptional grades. I swam, participated in clubs, you name it. I used to be a very active and healthy guy. The hindrance grew with me. The doctors call it myopia. The kids at school call it glasses. I call it bad luck and genetics. Well, whatever you call it, I was stuck with it, and it stuck with me. It started with a slight blurriness. Then it became a wall of impassibility. Surgery helped me slightly, but in the long run, just prolonged my fate. Eventually, I had the misfortune of coming down with the eye cataracts. The surgery this time was damning. Retinal detachment occurring when the retina literally detaches itself from the eye. It can lead from severe myopia to blindness. In my case, it led to blindness at the age of 18. Now, blindness meant several things to me. A dark point in my life, both literally and figuratively. I imagined that I was in a hole, a black place where no light shined. I existed there alone, in pure isolation. Sure, they could peer down into the hole and talk from their bright place above me, but they could not see. They could not pretend, but they couldn't comprehend what I was going through. I used to drink heavily and experiment with substances in order to dampen my perception. When you have that much detachment from the outside world, you begin to think. Imagine you are in a room. There is a ball in the room. You look at it, and it is red, hard to the touch, and bounces with a satisfying thud. Now if you leave it placed down on the floor and walk out of the room, facing the opposite direction, you cannot see, hear, or touch it anymore. What evidence do you have that it still exists? Infants go through this in their lives. Due to their pre-developed minds, I am sure we are all familiar with the game of peekaboo. Well, when the child sees its mother, it is aware it exists. But when the hands come down, where did the mother go? She disappeared. And because the baby cannot perceive her, it firmly believes that she does not exist. Alright, this guy legit has... Christ. He went into detail. Let's continue. Now apply this concept to us. Growing up, our brain develops, and we innately Know that an object continues to exist. It is something we learn to accept. However, when you are alone in your room at night, the world outside does not matter. We seclude we are secluded in our own little world, and only the imitated area is tangible. Now imagine that the darkness envelopes your entire life. You cannot see what is around you. So what proof do you have that it truly exists? Eh, um, Welcome to the stream, second viewer. It feels like school because it's like literature. And also it's like English. So there's many different, subjects that come into these type of stories. So welcome to the stream, second viewer. We just started off with our first story, so stay tuned for more. Sure, you can touch and hear and smell and taste, but how do you know you are not being manipulated? We have developed technology such as the television. We can create a world that exists in your field of vision. While watching it, our mind becomes absorbed in it, and we zone out from our surroundings. Yeah, okay. Okay, I wish. Our subconscious makes us believe that we exist in the world for a time. And when the movie ends, we snap back into reality. We have created a means to manipulate vision. So why is that concept not applicated to our immediate world? Nowadays, every person that I pass may greet me with a hello or brush by me. While I can feel them and hear them, how do I know they exist? How long have you been thinking this, my dude? Christ. How do they exist? I don't know. Probably by existing. Oh, snap. I hear a dog. Does it exist? I hear my Xbox turning on. I think it exists. Maybe it doesn't. Do I exist? We never know. Shoo. How can I be absolutely sure that every single person and thing around me is living, has a conscience and a mind like I do? I used to try making myself feel to cement the outside world, experiencing pain through sharp tools. However, this never worked out for me. It was just a mere interlude, after which I grasped the full nature of my surroundings. I believe this thought has taken over my mind, a sort of obsession. Though I doubt I am wrong. I spend my time isolated here in my room. All is quiet. I know that the floor in front of me extends about 4 feet, and the one behind me 6 or so feet. I know that the carpet is soft yet scratchy, smells damp, possible mold here and there. The air seeping in is cold, and yet I know none of these things. There is no world outside of here. As I move throughout my house, I believe that my surroundings are a mirage. They only exist when I am around them to give them a physical existence. See, kids, when you play too much VR, you start thinking like this dude. Jeez. I'd expect to hear this, like, from a YouTuber who's used VR for like 24 hours. Holy guacamole. Let's continue. I feel as if I am in a grand sort of surreal play. The set is created around me as I go through the scenes. The characters appear and disappear, play different roles, but only ones that relate immediately to mine. I feel as if the universe is trying to keep me occupied, or maybe I am all that exists. Thank you, God. Maybe each and every one that comes to visit me under the premises of hospitality, or the structural safety of my home, or investigation, or for my own benefit, is coming to get a spark of life, or a glimpse of living, of experiencing. One time I tried communicating with the actors, trying to get a feel of the depth of their minds. You see, I could believe that they exist just like me. However, something in my mind denies it. If a child can be deceived by something as small as hands, then what says that I should not be deceived by this world too? I grew up with people around me. Everyone did. They accept this and do not question it, especially with my once premature mind. What stipulates that I should not be tricked? I recognized this midway through my interrogation with one and left him out in the shed in the backyard. He was too weak to plead. However, I doubt he suffered much. I shut the door, walked upstairs, and he ended. All was quiet. Scaring me. Now more of them have come and searched my home. Police, a figment of my imagination that I once respected. I suppose I could not fully dictate the flow of my environment, as they were able to capture me, take me to another room, concrete floors. They allow me to write. However, I doubt that my handwriting is much legible anymore. I write this now to whom it may concern in order to help you grasp the truth. Perhaps there are more those of you who are like me. Perhaps nothing exists beyond that exit door. Either way, I am confined here, as I have always been. Nothing has changed. Wow. So guys, that was one story down. That was object permeance. Christ. Help me. Let's see. Sure, let's read Blackout. Blackout sounds interesting. Thank you, Miss Schufelt. I hadn't done anything different that day. It started off very normal. In fact, I awoke to the blaring alarm clock. I brushed my teeth. I fixed a breakfast and ate it. I kissed my mom goodbye and dashed out the front door, swinging my backpack with me. I sat on the bench at the bus stop waiting for the bus to arrive. I get there early every day, just to be sure. The only thing different that I recall would be the grass. It looked a little greener. So you can already tell the setting of this place is Britain. So, let's continue on, viewers. I entered the bus and found a seat. At my seat, near the back of the bus, I rested my headphones on my head and listened to some music. I listened to the mellower songs in the morning. As time passed, the bus quickly filled up with people. It was a school bus. The children were chattering and teasing and twisting and shouting. They were normal kids. With the headphones, however, all I could hear was the music. The soft piano layered on melodic, spacey harps and horns. I don't listen to normal music. This is the kid who'll be Mozart nowadays. Come on now. We all know he'll be We reach the school. With the headphones still on, I get up with the rest of the kids and become a drop in a rushing ocean of children. Not eager for class, but eager to arrive. School was loud and busy. The classrooms filled with students and teachers went on teaching all manner of subjects, while the students remained restless and less enthusiastic of the knowledge. I met up with all my friends at recess. I played with basketball with Tommy and Michael. They were my closest friends on the playground. After we tried, uh, after we tired of basketball, we went and dug around the rocks and wood chips that edged the enclosure, looking for bugs and worms. Hey, it sounds like me when I was in, what, first, second grade? I distinctly remember the moment just before the blackout. We were talking, we were taking long wood chips and poking at the dirt with them. I joked with Michael about that what we would do if we found a little bug friend. Tommy said he'd squash it, but we laughed, knowing he wouldn't ever do such a thing. The giggles receded and shifted my gaze to the dirt on the ground, smiling and stabbing away. For 3 years I'd been having these quote unquote episodes, my mother calls them. They occur every few months or so, just when we think they're gone for good. To my mom, I'd just go limp and black out, waking up every 45 minutes later in a hospital bed with doctors around me. My mother knew nothing of my experiences during the 45 minutes of being out. Imagine a night of sleeping where you don't remember your dreams. Hey, I have those. Where it's a brief blackness that is ended by your eyes waking up to a morning light or your ears sucking you into reality from an alarm. That's what I saw, except in that darkness, there's a figure. The face is shrouded and the details are indistinguishable. You know what, we'll just skip over that word because right now my head is like reading 1,000 words at once. It didn't feel like a dream either. Rather, this figure has been watching me all my life and just now peer through another world and meet his dark gaze. He just waits and watches. Nothing had been said, and nothing moved. But I knew he was there. I got that recognizable feeling of another presence with me. As I stabbed at the dirt, the episode began. I recognized that it was beginning as soon as I felt my eyes were about to pop out of my face. But then my breathing had already stopped and I couldn't speak. My fingertips began to tingle. My face and feet began to burn. Hot, as blood pooled to them. A horrible sensation deep inside my stomach wrenched and tore me. At this point, I lost my vision and consciousness. I don't remember ever hitting the dirt. I was in my blackness again. This has happened to so many times before that I thought I had become familiar with the figure, as well as the blackness. I was ready to meet him and to stare into his strange gaze. However, for the first time I was struck with fear. The figure was there, in the blackness, but I feared it. I hadn't before. It was strange, but I just wanted to end it. It to end. Yes, the figure spoke. I heard his voice with chilling clarity. It was deep and old. You are. He took a deep inhale, as if he'd just complete a long, daunting task. Done. Done. That's it. I woke up on the playground. The sun had moved to the other side of the sky. So time had passed. It was dead silent. Looking around, the lot was completely empty. I get up confused. Usually, I wake up in a hospital or on the floor of the office with the teachers gathered around. I approached the glass doors to enter the school. Peering through the glass, I saw nobody. I walked inside in the office, in the chairs by the door to regain my thoughts. I hear the rustling of papers and look up, see a folder floating through the air in the main desk and down a corridor. Quickly got up and followed the folder. Down the corridor, a door opened and the folder drifted in. I follow and watch as the folder approached the desk. The swivel chair turns and the folder flopped down on the table. I bolted out of the office, feeling alone and confused. I ran to a classroom and saw a piece of chalk writing writing A on the chalkboard. I panicked and left the school. I saw cars driving in the streets without passengers, doors opening for no people, gardens being gardened by floating tools. I couldn't see people. After a very long while, maybe weeks or months, I noticed a few things. I couldn't see my reflection. I could have guessed that. What's interesting, however, is that I don't seem to get hungry or need to eat. I just sort of wandered around, looking at things. The boredom drove me crazy. The only thing worse than the boredom was the loneliness. I kept myself accompanied by talking to myself while I aimlessly wandered city streets, houses, stores, parks, anywhere my feet could take me. I'd watch as people I couldn't see went about their daily lives. The wandering eventually became an interesting task for me. I would go for very long walks during the day, counting the numbers on people's home addresses. I'd see floating hoses, watering lawns, and drifting helmets riding bicycles. At night, I would sprint through the streets, dashing under street lights. I came up upon a library that kept me busy for a long while. I scanned the bookshelves and read almost half the books in the entire place. I just sat alongside other floating books, knowing somebody invisible is getting a good read. I'm able to retain information very well. I came across a cemetery. I spent a long while scanning the tombstones, reciting the names to see if any rang a bell. I recognized a few last names of my old friends. I would look at the dates and count how many years they lived to be. Sometimes I'd see incomplete dates, tombstones of those yet to die. This humbles me as I pondered those planning for death. I felt sorry for them. Sometimes I'd come back and find the incomplete dates completed, the dirt freshly turned. I'd go along, row by row. At night, I couldn't read them, so I'd sprint through the streets, dodging cars that couldn't see me. Today, I was finishing up my cemetery walk. I came across a tombstone with my name on it. The realization hit me hard, but it makes more sense now. The birth year and the death year were both engraved. I stared at it for a long while. You wouldn't believe how upset I was. I thought one day I'd wake up and see my mom again. I thought maybe I was in the hospital and I'd wake up, get better, and go back to school to play with Tommy and Michael. I don't think I cried, but I understand that I probably don't have any real tears. After sitting for a while, an idea occurred to me that I hadn't before. And that's how I got here. I know I can interact with the objects in this afterlife, but I also know that the living among me as well. I went into my old house. It's more familiar. I got on my computer and typed what I know. I submit it onto this website where hopefully it won't gain too much attention. Creepypasta. Where stories like this are abundant, but fiction mostly. I guess I'm mostly just writing this to organize my thoughts about what had happened, especially with today's realization. I doubt I'd be able to actually send any sort of messages to the living world. I had tried before to no avail. Oh well, it's not like I don't have time to waste. And that was Blackout. Alright, see ya, Miss Shufelt. Alright, so that was Blackout, folks. Now let's see. Sandman. This sounds like an interesting story, guys. Those who dream by day are caught of many things that escape those who dream only at night. Go to bed and wait for the Sandman. Even as it came out, okay. Even as it came out of James' mouth, it seemed to him a strange thing to say. He was not sure why he had, but for some reason it worked. Daniel went to bed. The next morning, though, he asked, "What does the Sandman look like?" James was making breakfast. Daniel sat at the table, short legs swinging under his chair. "Nothing really," James said. "It's just an expression." "What does it mean?" "Just something people say." He put a plate of eggs in front of Daniel and kissed him on the top of his head. He thought that would be the end of it, until he saw the Sandman for himself. He was getting ready for bed and stopped by Daniel's room to check on him while he slept, as he often did. It was such a routine precaution that when he saw a pale, naked man sitting on the edge of Daniel's bed, rocking back and forth, it took a moment for him to process what he was seeing. He reacted the way any father would. Of course, he ran into the room screaming, and for a moment he thought about attacking the intruder. But then the man on the bed turned, and that's when James saw that it was really a man. It was a pale, slithery thing, hairless and warped, whatever. Its joints turned the wrong way, and its body out of shape with itself. When it moved, it was like an insane marionette dancing on a stage. James froze. The skittering thing watched him. It felt spreading warmth, and he realized he peed his pants. Only when he remembered that Daniel was still there in bed, staring at the broken-shaped thing sitting a foot away. Did he regain the courage to move? He grabbed Daniel and ran. In the hall, he turned to see if the thing would follow them, but it didn't. For a moment, it watched, and then, moving like a stop-motion nightmare, it crawled to the window and jumped out, leaving only the bellowing curtains to mark its passing. James had trouble talking to the police. He reported a break-in, but when he asked to describe the intruder, he didn't know what to say. How could he make the ordinary man in the blue uniforms sitting at his kitchen table while two of his colleagues searched the house understand a thing like he'd seen? He couldn't even understand it himself. To make it worse, Daniel's memory did not correspond to James. He described an ordinary-looking burglar, a man in a mask, he said. James thought about it. Had it been a mask? No, it would had to have been a full costume, and an elaborate one. Something like they would use for a movie, and that would not explain the way it moved. But in the end, he simply echoed his son's testimony. "A man in a mask," he said. "A burglar." The lie unsettled him almost as much as what had happened. The doctor said Daniel wasn't hurt and showed no signs of molestation. James was relieved. They stayed at a motel for a couple of nights, until they felt ready to come home. Then James had a new security system installed, along with bars in the windows. He didn't like the sight of them in Daniel's room, but it seemed like the only thing to do. James was frightened that first night back in the house, but Daniel, strangely, was not. When asked if he felt okay sleeping alone, he just said yes. In the end, it was James who found himself wishing he were not sleeping alone. He was up all night listening for the sound of anything moving in the house. Although he had convinced himself that his memory was faulty and that it had been a normal, Beatty, probably deeply disturbed man in his son's room, when he closed his eyes even for a moment, there we go. He pictured bloodless skin and a twisted, inhuman face. He found himself wondering, why my house? Why my family? He knew, of course, that there didn't have to be a reason, but still, he wondered. 2 weeks later, Daniel stopped talking. James didn't notice it at first. Kids went through quiet phases sometimes, but eventually he tried to get Daniel to talk. he wouldn't. Eventually, it became clear that he couldn't. Back to the doctor they went. Nothing wrong with him that we can see, was the diagnosis. Was it the trauma, James asked? Could be, they said. Sometimes these things come on late. Children can be a mystery, even to those who know them best. They recommended a child psychologist, whom James couldn't afford. He could not, for that matter, even afford the bill they were giving him now. Nothing seemed to help. Daniel would write out answers to questions sometimes, but never more than a yes or no. When James would ask him what was wrong, or he'd see or heard anything affected him, Daniel would only stare. He seemed furtive and bemused. James found himself missing the sound of his son's voice. Sometimes he wanted to hear it so bad that he ached. But it seemed that Daniel would not talk again until he was ready. James had other things to worry about too. He was convinced beyond reason that the intruder was not really gone. Though the alarm never went off and the clocks and bars remained undisturbed, he was sure that he heard movement in the night. Not normal movement. It was a sound like a huge snake slithering through the house. When he heard it, he imagined horrible things. Nothing was ever there when he went to investigate. Though he often thought he glimpsed something just out of the corner of his eye, pale foot or a misshapen shadow that would slink away as soon as he turned. He rarely slept, and when he did, he had haunted dreams. Soon he realized he had not left the house in weeks except to go to the bank and buy groceries. He felt hemmed in. With Daniel acting mute, he hadn't had an actual conversation with anyone in weeks, so he called his mother. The connection was bad, and her voice sounded faint. On the verge of being not there at all. "I guess I'm okay, Ma," he said, pausing to wipe the sweat from his palms and then make sure he could hear Daniel playing in the next room. But things have been a little rough. We had a break-in. "Oh, how awful," Mom said. "How did they take anything?" "Oh, did they take anything?" "Nah, just ran off." It was weird though. I haven't really felt comfortable since then. "Are you still working at the hospital?" "At the hospital?" "No, Ma. I left last year. You know that." "Oh. Well, have you been getting out?" "What about that nice woman you were seeing last year? The one who played the piano?" James scolded. "She was always asking that kind of question. That kind of thing. Didn't they know how hard it was being a single father? That he didn't have the time?" He was about to say so when something made him pause. "Ma, is there anyone else on the line?" "I don't think so." James was sure he heard it, though, the short, gasping sound of someone trying to hold their breath and failing. A cold feeling crept across the back of his neck. "You're sure nobody is listening on the other phone?" There is no other phone. I'm on the cell. That's why the service is so bad." "Then what is?" James stopped. If the sound wasn't coming from her end, then he dropped the phone and raced to the hall. The extension hung on its hook, undisturbed, heart pounding. He hurtled into the garage. The spare phone sat on the workbench. No one was in sight. But could they have been? Could someone have been here all along, listening to his phone call, and then slithered away? Might they be here even now? The next day, he took out the extra phone extensions. He even filled in the jacks with rubber cement. Daniel watched him work, his eyes curious, but James offered no explanation. He began giving Daniel a light physical exam every week. His CNA training was a little rusty after a year on disability, but he never really forget. It was an absurd thing to do, of course, but if there was a physical cause for Daniel's behavior, it would be nothing he could discover this way. He was aware on some level that it was compulsive behavior. Nevertheless, it made him feel better. One morning, James set the diagram of the stethoscope against what the? Excuse me, I was not here. Stethoscope against Daniel's chest, but he could not locate a heartbeat. What? He moved his hand in search of the right spot, to no avail. Then, to test it, he listened to his own heartbeat. It came through steady and clear, but when he checked Daniel again, he didn't hear anything. A thought came abiding to him of the Tin Man and Wizard of Oz, whose chest was empty as a kettle. A sick feeling roiled his stomach. He threw the stethoscope down and grabbed Daniel by the shoulders, looking into his face. Daniel stared back with bright eyes. He even smiled a little, with the corners of his mouth. James felt the tingle of tears. He swept his son up with his arms and hugged him. Daniel hugged back. Then James put his shirt back on him and sent him to play. The stethoscope, he decided, was broken. He threw it in the trash. Things got worse. James' terrors were no longer regulated to the long hours of the night. Now it seemed that some creeping, some skittering, and scuttling, some unknowable noise in some dark corner or another, filled every second of his day. The thought of how big the house really was started to weigh on him. There were so many rooms he wasn't in at any given time. So many places someone or something else could be. He imagined strange figures occupying the rest of his home when he wasn't around, melting into the walls or emerging with the shadows whenever he turned on a light or opened a door. He knew if they were there. Oh, how would he know if they were there? How would he ever know? Soon he didn't even have to be outside of a room to imagine. When he walked up the stairs, he pictured pale figures lurking beneath them. When he went down to the hall, he pictured a crawling thing slithering behind the walls, shadowing his every step. If he sat too long in the same chair, he imagined that he was right behind him. But he was never comforted when he turned around and found nothing there, as he could only guess that meant it had moved, swiftly and silently, behind him once again. Whenever he was not looking right now, that was where he imagined it to be. Oh, Jesus. This story has thousands of words. Losing his mind. He knew. The only thing that helped him cling to sanity was that Daniel seemed understood. Other than his muteness, his behavior was perfectly normal. And whenever he seemed to sense that his father was troubled, he would hug him or squeeze his hand or even smile. Sometimes when he left the room, James cried. One night he found himself creeping around the house with no lights on at 2 o'clock in the morning. If the intruding thing had taken to violating his daytime activities, then he would get revenge by confronting it on its own terms within night. And really, night was no more frightening to him now than day. They were almost interchangeable. Jesus. Boys, there's a lot of things going on here. Stop the joke, bye bye. Lee. Guys, we've been streaming for 41 minutes. I think we should end stream here. Hope you guys enjoyed. Please subscribe, leave a like, comment down below, share this to your friends. Subscribe to the people in the description below. Hope you guys enjoy. Don't forget to check out the link in the description. Have a nice day, night, morning, whatever time it is for you. Hope you guys enjoyed, and I will talk to you all later. Peace, guys, girls, aliens, and other genders. Love you all.